Okay, I think we're just waiting for a couple more to join, are we, Gareth, before we kick off?
Yes, we will, Rob. Thanks. Hi, everybody who's on so far. Thanks for joining.
Hi, everyone.
And maybe just to say to the participants who've joined, we're trying to leave a little bit of time at the end for a bit of questions and answers, folks. So if there's anything occurs to you, or even if you're coming to the session with a question or two, just please feel free to drop them into the Q&A or the chat, and we'll answer as many as we can with the time remaining at the end of the session. And if there isn't time to get to your question, we'll follow up separately with the answer to it as well. So feel free to do that as we go through.
Great stuff. So I suppose just while we're waiting for people to join, I might just kick off in terms of doing some introductions and stuff like that. So yeah, hi everyone. You're all very welcome to our sustainability in retail webinar today. We hope you all get some useful insights from the session. I suppose I might just introduce the team here quickly before we get started. So my name is Rob Shanahan. I'm a senior manager in the consumer goods and retail team here in Bearing Point, Ireland. And I'm delighted to be joined by my colleagues Gareth Coleman, Senior Manager and Sustainability Services Lead for us here in the Bearing Point Dublin practice, and Alex Matai, who is the lead for one of our core sustainability offerings, Bearing Point Sustainability 360. So I suppose before we jump into the webinar, I thought it might be useful just to give you a little bit of background to this morning's session. So the driver for us offering this webinar today was a project we recently delivered for the British Retail Consortium, where we used our Sustainability 360 methodology to establish the sustainability maturity of retail organisations in the UK. So naturally, we felt it would be appropriate to share that approach and the insights from that piece of work across the IRC with our own retail organisations here in Ireland. And we're actually going to give you a little flavour of what those Sustainability 360 interviews actually look like. And we'll walk through some sample recommendations, etc. So you really get a feel for what that process looks like for a client. As Gareth mentioned, we do have quite a bit to get through. So if you have any questions, you might please pop them in the chat, and we'll try to address some of them at the end. We mightn't get to all the questions in the session as we will be tight on time, but we will reach out to anybody whose question we don't get to after the session. We will also share the recording of today's session with everyone who's in attendance on the call today. Great, so I think that's it from a housekeeping perspective. So I'd like to hand you over now to Gareth and Alex to kick off the session.
Thanks very much, Rob. Okay, so hi everybody. You're very welcome, and thanks for joining this morning. So to start off, just to give you a little bit of context for the webinar today and expand a little bit on what Rob has summarized there. Just the Bearing Point, we're a technology and business consulting firm. We're sort of located in multiple locations around Europe and with offices globally also. But it's the Irish practice that are hosting today's session, albeit with some good support from our colleague from the German practice, Alex. A little bit more about him later, maybe. But just in terms of Bearing Point and sustainability, so how we've been supporting clients for the past probably between 5 and 10 years on the sustainability question is sort of trying to tie together our global expertise on key sustainability topics with our program and change management and also business transformation experience. And that's all about trying to create a sustainability journey for our clients and supporting them to make that a success. So, you know, our clients work with us across the range of sustainability topics, whether that's accelerating data maturity or implementing ESG platforms, selecting and also then integrating and embedding, carbon accounting or ESG reporting solutions. We also then our climate SMEs and supported by our transformation experts, can help our clients over the long term to sort of, embed sustainability into their operating models and help to transform their business models. We help clients with decarbonizing their supply chains, and understanding and then reducing the impact of Scope 3 emissions. We sometimes work with clients to help unlock business investment, in order to support the sustainability professionals within those organizations, to implement strategic projects that'll help drive sustainability topics. And then, of course, one of the key and the biggest areas, certainly in the last 2 to 3 years, is we're working with clients to interpret the impact of legislation and also to adhere and comply with that legislation, such as ESRS or CSRD. So that's just a kind of a quick snapshot of the kind of the range of the areas in which we're working with our clients. So then, in terms of today, as Rob mentioned, during 2024, in collaboration with the British Retail Consortium, we designed a survey based on our Sustainability 360 maturity assessment methodology. So you'll hear that Bearing Point Sustainability 360 framework or methodology mentioned a few times as we go through today. But this was to help the BRC to assess the current status of their members' sustainability maturity. And in total, 42 organisations across the UK completed that holistic assessment, and that assessment's covered 7 key dimensions that I'll talk about in a moment, that kind of underpin that Sustainability 360 methodology. But coming out of that, we prepared in collaboration with the BRC a very detailed report. And that's provided a lot of insights as to how sustainability maturity within the UK retail sector can be advanced. So we certainly feel there's some insights there that could be of good interest to the audience today and to the retail sector in Ireland. So that was part of our logic in proposing this webinar and putting it on this morning. Just to talk very briefly before I jump into some of those insights and do a little bit of a deeper dive on them. Just what is that Sustainability 360 framework? So it's in simplest terms, it's a maturity assessment for sustainability topics. And what Alex was actually, who's on the call here, was instrumental in sort of defining and developing this methodology, and has delivered it for a lot of clients across Europe over the past number of years. So it's aligned to sort of relevant ESG and SDG standards and frameworks, and we've kind of broken it up into these 7 different dimensions, which are governance and organization, operations and supply chain, finance, regulatory risk and reporting, people and culture, customer and stakeholder centricity, data and technology, and then strategy, products and services. And the idea then is that under each of these 7 dimensions, you have a series of subtopics, 30 in total. And then related to each of those subtopics, you have a fairly substantial bank of questions. And the idea is that you work through these questions with the client. We would always tailor the questions to suit the type of organization we're talking to, in terms of their scale, in terms of their processes, in terms of their core business model and business activities, and of course of the sector in which they're operating. But coming out then of those questions, whether that's delivered via survey or delivered via workshops, again, we usually will tailor that to the organization in question. For example, with the BRC, we used the survey approach because it was a wide range of stakeholders we wanted to liaise with and connect with. So coming out of that, then you get an as-is overview of the organization's sustainability maturity. So it's kind of a rating across each of those 7 dimensions. And then we then sort of do a deeper dive into each of those 30 subtopics, offering, key insights, key opportunities for increasing the maturity, and some of the key risks that may exist of not looking to progress to maturity under that specific dimension. That then allows you to progress onto working with the client to develop a roadmap that, you know, sort of has jointly prioritized measures, but concrete and measurable measures to increase the maturity. And then as a sort of a complementary exercise, we would generally work with the organization just to determine that the foundation to succeed is there, the foundation to execute is there in terms of the skills needed, the organizational structure required, the senior management buy-in, etc. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. It's just thought it would be useful for people to get an understanding of how that maturity assessment works, because that's what then allowed us to get to the point where we developed some of these insights and learnings from speaking with the retail sector over in the UK. So I was going to, we've sort of picked out 3 key trends that we've noticed, but within each of those, there's a number of key points. So the first key trend is in relation to ESG reporting, which won't be a surprise to anyone on the call, I expect. But fundamentally, I suppose the key message is that ESG reporting is no longer optional. It's integral to doing business, whatever sector nearly we're operating in now. It's vital for gaining investment and also for maintaining consumer trust. So certainly, as you'll be aware, in the EU and came across very strongly over the BRC study in the UK. You know, governments and legislators are taking a very comprehensive approach to ESG regulation, with a significant portion of their regulatory pipelines aimed at decarbonisation. We see that in the UK, they've announced their intention to continue the UK ETS, that's the emission trading scheme, beyond 2030 until at least 2050. And this is resulting in increasing regulatory pressures to invest in decarbonisation. In Europe, the ETS is being reformed to incentivize further emission reduction across more sectors. So the plan is that free allowances are going to be phased out gradually between 26 and 34, with allowances to be cut for industry by 20% if they don't have energy audits or are not able to demonstrate that they're implementing decarbonisation measures. So the long-term nature, I suppose, of these policies, it does signal a clear commitment by governments to enforce stricter emissions controls and incentivize sustainable business practices. And this is going to impact the retail sector because you know, rising carbon prices are going to result in higher operational costs. We'll see the increasing need for transparency in ESG reporting and pressure to increase the sustainability and greenness of supply chains. So retailers, and this is what was coming across as the views from the retailers in the UK as well, the feeling that retailers who don't act progressively and proactively to reduce emissions will face financial penalties, but also will fall behind in regulatory compliance and investor expectations. Similarly, then there's the question of consumer pressures. So as consumers become more conscious of sustainability when making their purchases, they want the companies they buy from to be more accountable. Hence the need for ESG reporting. There's an interesting stat that we learned is that companies who are demonstrating high ESG performance are outperforming their peers, achieving 3.7 times higher operating margins and generating up to 2.6 times higher shareholder returns. So the value is clear to see there, and this sort of then brings us along to investor demands. Somewhat similarly to the consumer preferences. So shareholders and investors are demanding clearer reporting about ESG performance and strategies because they know there's an inextricable link between sustainability and future business performance. And obviously then lack of progress on sustainability is going to lead to heightened reputational risks for retailers, which will in turn impact their investors. So investors are prioritizing companies that show clear and credible commitments to ESG principles. Just also in relation to that key trend of ESG reporting, what's coming across, and this is what we're seeing across Europe, in addition to the study over in the UK, is that the ESG reporting function is increasingly moving into the finance function within organizations and also within retail organizations. So a key way to deliver this function is obviously through reporting systems, ESG reporting systems, or platforms. And what's becoming clear to us is some of the strong benefits in investing in ESG platforms. So, first of all, you've got your centralized data management. So platforms like Sweep or Workiva allow you to centralize your ESG data, ensure consistent and accurate reporting across multiple business units. So you're improving your visibility and traceability. They also facilitate automated reporting as well. So the data collection and compliance with frameworks such as CSRD, it reduces the manual effort, also reducing the risk of reporting errors. And then your ESG reporting solutions also improve your decision making. So it's real-time data analytics, ideally, that are allowing you to make data-driven decisions on your ESG initiatives, identifying inefficiencies and also identifying opportunities for improvement as well. Another big benefit then, of course, is compliance and audit readiness. So it's ensuring that you're compliant with the ESG related regulations, because there's built-in tools there to track regulatory changes and help prepare for your audits more efficiently. It also facilitates improved collaboration with your suppliers and monitoring of those suppliers. So, supplier assessments can be based on ESG criteria, then allowing you to monitor your supplier sustainability practices across their supply chain. And of course, can also improve cost efficiency. So, by streamlining your reporting processes, reducing manual effort, etc., you can improve your cost efficiency. It'll allow you to improve your stakeholder communication as well, because it facilitates those transparent and consistent comms with your investors. And then the big benefit is performance tracking and benchmarking. So, if you're to go through something like a sustainability maturity assessment, how can you track how your initiatives are helping you to improve that efficiency without taking on too much time and effort yourself? Reporting ESG reporting solutions are a great way to do that. So that's just a whistle stop tour on sort of one of the first key trends that we observed. Moving on to another one, then it's kind of a long-term retail sector trend, and this is in relation to delivering supply chain transparency through sustainable procurement. And this was something that came across very strongly in the BRC study. So I guess, with climate change and the increased focus on transparency, retailers are going to need to reduce their Scope 3 emissions. And they're probably going to need to do this by reimagining how they source materials, how they engage their suppliers, and also how they manage risks. And procurement plays a critical role in ensuring this long-term sustainability, resilience, ethical practices, all within the retail supply chain. And most people will know the majority of a company's greenhouse gas emissions, they often come from the supply chain. These are known as Scope 3 emissions. So these would be emissions generated by suppliers, transportation, and product lifecycle activities. And while different departments can be responsible for those Scope 1 and 2 emissions, procurement teams are very often tasked with managing and reducing Scope 3 emissions. So procurement is we see increasingly focused on building resilient supply chains that can withstand disruptions such as climate change, pandemics, geopolitical instability, and resilience in procurement then means diversifying your supplier base, creating local supply chains, ensuring ethical practices are being followed across your global, hopefully, supply network. And we see that retailers are diversifying their supply chains by sourcing from multiple geographies to avoid those disruptions. And increasingly, procurement strategies are now aiming to identify and onboard new suppliers who meet ESG criteria, while mitigating potential risks tied to natural disasters or geopolitical conflicts. Similarly, then, the sustainable and ethical sourcing is becoming a really, really important topic in sustainable procurement. So that's, sourcing materials and services from suppliers that adhere to high ESG standards themselves. And this follows in then to supplier selection, where retailers are now being encouraged to prioritize partnerships with suppliers that demonstrate strong environmental, social, and governance credentials, and also procuring from suppliers who follow sustainable land use practices, avoid deforestation, overfishing, or water-intensive agriculture as well. So ethical sourcing means working then with suppliers who meet fair labour practices and human rights standards, and avoiding suppliers who may be involved in forced labour or poor working conditions. So the push for transparency in the supply chain, it allows consumers and stakeholders to see the retailer's efforts to adhere to these ESG standards. There's in terms of then, it's also a risk management and contingency planning question as well, because by focusing on how ESG procurement strategies can protect your business from financial penalties and reputational damage and supply chain disruptions due to non-compliance with emerging regulations. It can, an example of the way in which we see some retailers doing this now is by implementing supplier scorecards that will include ESG performance as a key metric, alongside traditional measures like cost and quality. And we see procurement functions asking their suppliers to be compliant with ESG certifications such as B Corp or Fair Trade. So quite a lot to that sustainable procurement, delivering supply chain transparency to consider, but certainly very, very relevant for the retail sector, and something that came across very strongly in the analysis we did over in the UK with the British Retail Consortium. So I have one further trend that I was going to just touch on for a few moments, everybody. And this is one that is one of the big buzzwords in the sort of sustainability world for the last number of years, but it's gaining a huge amount of traction, both in the commercial sector, but also in the public sector and at government level. And this is the circular economy, and how that might then impact product design and innovation, resale, and the secondhand market. So we just thought it would be useful to run through some of the insights we gathered in relation to this as well. So I guess maybe it's no harm to first of all define what's meant by the circular economy. So the circular economy makes it possible to address sustainable development issues across the entire value chain while reducing costs and increasing revenues. And there's a few core components, I suppose, to what we mean by the circular economy. First of all, it's about redefining the term waste, so acknowledging its potential as a resource, and designing products that can be reused and recycled. And it's also producing in a sustainable way, so using less raw materials, designing products with a reduced environmental footprint, and that means from raw materials all the way through to the end of life, which is by definition after the product has left the ownership of your business. It's also concerned with supporting consumers towards making responsible choices. For example, promoting repair and reuse rather than replacement, and building new business models that enable that repair and reuse, and designing products that have a use and maybe are not just a possession. And it's the circular economy. It's a concept that's framed in the entire value chain. So the onus of circular business models is to work with upstream and downstream partners very closely to achieve those core concepts. It's a challenge for organizations, and none more so than the retail organizations, because it invites businesses to think about how can they work with their upstream supply chain to minimize the production of waste as a byproduct of the manufacture of my finished product. And also challenges us to think about what additional services we may have to offer alongside our products in order to enable our customers to make a sustainable product choice. So how could we deliver that service in a cost-efficient way where the customer can understand the value proposition, and very importantly, it won't have an impact on the competitive position of my core product or products in the market as well. So some tricky issues to consider there, but I guess why is it important? Because it's important because moving from a linear to a circular model will ensure the financial sustainability and resilience of your business in the long term, while minimizing its social and environmental impact. And we've seen from our clients that there's a number of key benefits. We've listed 5 here of actively pursuing a circular business model. So first of all, it's about going beyond regulatory compliance. So it's not just focusing on achieving compliance, but actually using regulations as part of your framework for strategic decision making. And it's also then allowing you to anticipate regulatory change and move early to reduce the potential impacts of those emerging economic and reputational risks. The second benefit then is relating to reducing costs and limiting risks. So by securing resources, you're addressing the issue of raw material availability by turning waste into a resource in theory. And you're also then reducing costs and optimizing flows because you're using processes in a circular value chain to increase your productivity, avoid waste, and improve your competitiveness also. It also supports you with getting to grips with socio-economic, socio-environmental issues. So, you can measure and optimize the impact of your business activities in terms of carbon footprint, pollution, and waste. But you're also then participating in a society that values impact-based professions. So you're creating new job opportunities in sectors such as recycling, reuse, repair, etc. You're also then creating a differentiating factor for yourself and for your products, because you can win new markets through the circular business model and circular product and service offering. And you're also then helping to stimulate the innovation needed to meet the needs of the wider circular economy, which is good for the environment. So, you're supporting new technologies, recycling channels, waste recovery, and things like that. And then the fifth sort of big benefit we've called out here is improving your reputation. So you potentially can be attracting new customers who will have a committed brand identity. You can attract and retain top talent also, very, very important criteria for the labour market. And it also can be something that you can build employee loyalty around. high impact corporate projects. So a lot of positives there if able to move towards that model. There's the circular product design then can actually help to align with a very strong focus that's ever growing on biodiversity as well. So retailers are seeking to increase their focus on biodiversity generally. The EU are set to finalize a deforestation law that companies will only be able to sell certain products in the EU if the supplier has issued a due diligence statement confirming that their product was not brought from or generated from land that was deforested after 2020. So that covers a wide range of different types of products. Biodiversity loss then has recently entered the stage and begun to rise on the agenda of policymakers and investors. And this will potentially have a negative impact on any organizations or companies who are non-compliant with biodiversity. It's going to become increasingly prevalent in the next years. So circular economy through circular product design is a business model that a lot of retailers are starting to look at and starting to consider. And I suppose ultimately, the circular economy, it's a system solution framework that empowers people to address global challenges such as climate change, biodiversity loss, waste, and pollution as well. The other factor, I suppose, to the circular economy question then is this continued growth in resale and second-hand markets, and this is a really interesting one now. And again, some good insights we gathered over the past year. So we're seeing that resale is starting to become a real long-term solution for many retailers. So there's a very strong consumer demand, especially among younger generations. The studies recently have shown that 62% of Gen Z and millennials actively seek sustainable and eco-friendly options when they're shopping. And it's driving increased interest in resale because consumers want to align their purchasing habits with their values. So they're prioritizing brands that offer secondhand or circular solutions. And revenue growth is really strong in the resale market as well. So the global secondhand market is projected to reach $350 billion by 2027. So by that metric, it's growing 5 times faster than the traditional retail market over the next 5 years. So that's a significant opportunity for retailers to tap into a rapidly expanding revenue stream. Then additionally, the resale, it's addressing growing expectations around sustainability. So buying secondhand reduces a product's carbon footprint by up to 82%, which is a substantial impact. And by incorporating resale, retailers can meet sustainability demands while also reducing waste and fostering a circular economy. So, these factors, strong market growth, shifting consumer preferences, and a focus on sustainability, we certainly feel that these make resale as a long-term solution for modern retailers. And there's some interesting examples of organizations who are trying to adapt these principles. You might be aware of, for example, Patagonia's how they're trying to extend their product life cycles. So they have their worn wear program. So that includes repair services, trade-ins, secondhand sales, and it's been very successful and garnered them a lot of credit and praise and brand recognition and improvement. It's another interesting one there, just to call out Michelin tires. So they went through an exercise or an initiative to transform everyday waste into new tires. So it's just interesting to see how different organizations are trying to think a little bit outside the box and more circularly as well. So some interesting food for thought there. So look, I'll leave it there in terms of the trends for now, folks. It's you know, there's a lot we learned from that exercise. I think it's really encouraging to see that the retail sector are becoming very, very focused on sustainability as a topic. And they have an understanding there that there's a way they can go with it, but there's huge opportunity for them there as well. So just to move on to our next segment then. So we thought it might be nice for you to, you could have people here who are kind of saying this all makes a lot of sense and they're good insights and all of that, but how do we do it? What does something like this sustainability 360 assessment, what does that look like? What kind of questions do you get asked? So we just asked if Alex would come on here. So Alex helped to develop this framework for Bearing Point and has delivered it for a lot of clients and was involved in the BRC project also. So Alex today is going to sort of, just for the next little while, play the role of, the Bearing Point consultant. And we've got Sarah Fossataro here as well, who's from Bearing Point. She's going to play the role of sustainability lead within a large scale organization, retail organization, who have functions including manufacturing, distribution, and retail outlets. So it's an organization where sustainability is seen as a challenge, but also an opportunity. And it's an organization with multiple stakeholders. But today, Sarah has the mandate to have a holistic view on what all of those elements are. So I'll hand over to Alex, and let's see what Sustainability 360 looks like. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, thank you very much, Garen. And hello, Sarah. During this workshop, we will have just an open conversation regarding multiple sustainability topics regarding the currently ongoing activities across your company. And the goal is to get the overall understanding of the maturity level for the different topics and provide you with a consolidated view, an understanding of what are the impacts and risks, as well as the suggested next steps. Does that sound good to you?
Yes, of course. That sounds great. Thank you so much, Alex. I hope I can provide some useful insight for you today on the topics that you need. And I may also consult with our internal team to answer any of the questions that you may have following this discussion.
Yes, absolutely. Just refer to the topics and the fields that you are aware of. It's quite normal that there might be some white spots. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this exercise. And we will most probably cover any open points from today in the maturity sessions we will run with the other departments.
Great.
So let's kick things off. To start, how exactly have you developed your sustainability strategies? What were the steps that you took? For example, have you conducted a materiality assessment in a way that you assessed the impact that your operations have on the planet and the people, but also the impact that certain sustainability topics have on your operations?
Yes, we actually did conduct a double materiality assessment to identify which are the material topics for our company. This yielded a short list of topics, such as climate change, working conditions in the supply chain, and also biodiversity and waste management. We then used the DMA material topics as a basis to set up our clear objectives, which are based on different horizons and KPIs. And after this, we set up objectives and we derived a list of concrete actions for each of our departments and also a roadmap to reach these objectives, including an application for SBTI, which is the Science-Based Targets Initiatives, and to focus on our decarbonization topics.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sarah. That sounds really comprehensive. It looks like congratulations. You really did a good job.
Thank you.
And when you did the double materiality assessment, have you included any external stakeholders in this process? Have you interviewed any external stakeholders, such as your tier 1 suppliers, when building your sustainability strategy?
Well, we did have an internal debate about this actually. However, since external stakeholders consultations are currently not mandatory in the CSRD, we wanted to move forward quickly. So we decided to just keep it internal for now.
Okay, I see. Well, it is very true what you're saying that it is optional based on the regulation to include external stakeholders. Nevertheless, it's a very important step. Sustainability transformations will require the support of external stakeholders and ecosystem partners, especially suppliers. For example, when you think about Scope 3 emission reductions from the upper value chain, that it's exactly where it's highly beneficial to include external stakeholders early on in the process, including suppliers. So just some food for thought. You mentioned that you wanted to move fast. That's why you didn't include external stakeholders. But did you have enough time to have a session with your leadership, such as the CEO, regarding the sustainability ambition level? For example, are you aiming for compliance or following the trends sent by other companies? Or are you aiming to use sustainability as a transformation, a value transformation?
Yes, absolutely. The direction from our leadership is very clear. We see the value in considering sustainability and increasing customer sensitivity for sustainable products. We therefore aim to go beyond compliance and use sustainability as a value creation for our company.
That's really great, because what happens often is everybody has the focus on the challenge, but sustainability also is an opportunity, an opportunity to differentiate, an opportunity to appeal to different customer groups and to gain a competitive advantage through it. And you mentioned earlier that you've defined a roadmap for your sustainability objectives, which is great. But to what extent is this roadmap also covered by concrete projects, meaning that the roadmap items have a budget allocation, clear teams and responsibilities across the different departments, as well as a common understanding of what does it mean to have success with regard to this project or initiative?
Yes, I would say we have partially considered this. Some of our roadmap items are clear projects, such as the ones for decarbonization, where we have a defined project with a budget and a governance to measure our scope 1, 2, and 3 goals and establish all the data collection processes that we need. However, for some of the roadmap items, we still don't have a clear budget and we're not yet aligned on the actual implementation teams. It could be our sustainability team or the operations department as well, but we are currently working on closing these gaps.
Okay. Well, it seems based on what you're saying that your sustainability team is consisting of a centralized team with a few FTEs, or do you also have sustainability profiles or contributors in each department?
Well, for the moment, it's just myself and 2 other FTEs working across the departments. However, would you have a suggestion on how to best set up our sustainability governance?
Well, of course, we will definitely cover that in the next phase with the deliverables, but just as an early insight, it is okay in the short term to have separated sustainability FTEs that are really dedicated to pushing the topic and moving the needle and gaining the awareness and addressing ad hoc urgent topics like regulation. However, in the long term, you really want to have sustainability integrated across the responsibilities in the different departments. It should not be a separated topic, but rather it should be integrated in the business as usual processes as well as the responsibilities of existing roles throughout departments.
Great, thank you for your insights.
Speaking also of people, in terms of employee engagement beyond the sustainability core team, do you have any additional contributors that are supporting you? For example, colleagues who have ideas and are willing to support the core team with the implementation of specific initiatives or ideas?
Yes, of course we do. We have quite a few people who are volunteering currently to support with certain sustainability initiatives, such as raising awareness and supporting the data gathering process for CSRD, and also coming up with CO2 reduction measures for our company. However, at this point, it is rather ad hoc and not really officially organized under any labels such as sustainability champions or drivers.
Well, that's great that you're able to leverage the enthusiasm. It will definitely benefit more if you have this a little bit more organized or structured. But mentioning CSRD, when it comes to regulation, are you aware of the applicable sustainability regulation for your company that are happening now, as well as the upcoming ones? For example, CSRD, the corporate sustainability reporting is one, but also corporate sustainability due diligence directive, also known as the 3S, CS3D, for the supply chain, or the European regulation of deforestation that was also mentioned earlier, or even the CBAM, the carbon border adjusting mechanism, which are especially relevant for imports and exports. So how are you tackling this regulatory wave?
Yes, for sure. We are aware of the most of the upcoming regulations, especially when it comes to CSRD reporting. As mentioned during the strategy discussion we had earlier, we did complete the double materiality assessment, which is the basis for the material topics on which we have to report as of 2026. And we are currently now working on closing those gaps from the outcomes. Regarding CS3D, CBAM, and EUDR, our compliance team is also supporting with research and understanding how exactly these regulations will affect our company. The human rights and biodiversity expectations are also challenging topics for us to address at the moment. Nevertheless, we are already having to report on some of these topics in CSRD. I'm referring to the ESRS packages, the E4 biodiversity and ecosystems, and S2 workers in the value chain. It is challenging times for us, but at least we're moving in the right direction.
Yes, indeed they are, and indeed we are moving in the right direction. And you mentioned that you're working on the gap analysis. So how are you currently managing your sustainability data? Like, do you have any ESG software tools specialized for sustainability reporting? Or at least have you considered structuring things via a reporting tool?
No, actually, we do not have a specialized tool for CSRD reporting as of now. However, we are considering looking into this. For the moment, we do have an in-house carbon accounting tool to help us automate and standardize calculations for our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions.
Okay, I see. And how exactly do your data gathering processes look like? Most probably you do have some automations in place via API to feed the data from certain systems directly into the accounting tool, or how does it work exactly?
Actually, right now, for most of our data, we are still using manual inputs. For example, employee commuting. As part of scope 3, we are using a firm-wide standardized survey to gather the patterns from our workforce. And then we extrapolate this data and we manually feed it into a carbon accounting system. That's currently how we're doing it.
Okay, I see. So there is still quite a bit of manual work in there, and quite labor intensive on the side of your team. You mentioned scope 3 emissions. So to what extent do you actually monitor your suppliers' sustainable performance in your evaluation process? For example, do you consider both social and environmental criteria when looking at your supplier base?
Yes, absolutely. Since the emissions for our suppliers are relevant for our upstream scope 3 emissions, we are monitoring our suppliers when it comes to carbon emissions, but also water use and waste management. When it comes to social aspects, we engage with our suppliers to ensure that they comply with fair wages as well as safe working conditions. Nevertheless, we are currently having this dialogue as we are only doing this with some of our tier 1 suppliers and not all of them.
Well, nevertheless, that is a great start. Still, it's important to have visibility across the whole value chain, meaning for tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers. In other words, the suppliers or subcontractors of your main suppliers. That is also where your suppliers must play their part when it comes to sustainability. And that's where there is a lot of room for collaboration. When it comes to the purchasing departments in your company, do you have sustainability guidelines, and is sustainability a sourcing criterion alongside price and quality?
Our team has prepared internal sustainability purchasing policies, and it is currently in the process of expanding this as well. When it comes to purchasing criteria, we did manage to include sustainability alongside price and quality. However, sustainability does not have the same weight currently in the decision-making process as quality or pricing does. But with small steps, hopefully we'll get there.
Okay, yeah, definitely. One step at a time. Speaking about suppliers and staying along these lines, of stakeholders, they are one of the major stakeholder groups that are important for you. But there's also another major stakeholder group is your customers. And how do you empower your customers to make more sustainable choices? Do you have any customer awareness campaigns like Patagonia did with "Don't buy this jacket," or do you maybe have sustainability products stand out via certain labels or certifications?
We actually have not done any large-scale awareness campaigns as of now. However, we do have various certifications on our products when it comes to fair wages and that the product is 100% manufactured from recycled materials, so that our customers can be aware of this as well.
Okay, that's really important because labeling can be a quite sensitive subject. Nowadays, there are so many labels and certifications. Customers can very easily be overwhelmed, and there is also a certain risk of greenwashing, depending on what labels are used. So how do you mitigate these risks currently?
Yes, that is very true. We are currently working only with highly reputable label providers, such as the ones from the fair trade, for example. We also limit the number of labels per product to keep things clear and simple for our customers to see.
Yeah, definitely. Simplicity and clarity is it's a great thing to have. And regarding communication, you're not having any direct campaigns, but how do you define sustainability or sustainable products within your company? Sometimes what happens is that certain companies make an aspect of a product more sustainable and then try to label the whole product as being more sustainable. For example, 50% of the cotton used in this t-shirt is recycled. Nevertheless, what it's not so obvious is that the electricity used in producing this comes from burning fossil fuels, or that the suppliers barely pays fair wages to its employees. Or if you consider the supermarket chain part of your business, you could have tomatoes that are grown using vertical agriculture and use up to 90% less water. However, what's also not super obvious to the consumers in the first step is that they may be transported from 2,000 kilometers away. Hence, they have a larger carbon footprint compared to local products that use more water. So how are you tackling this challenge?
Yes, this is for sure a challenge for us as well. Overall, we are trying to bring our products to a certain acceptable sustainability level for our customers. In my opinion, transparent and honest communication to the end consumer is always the key. But coming back to your example, of course, we need to ensure fair wages as well as consider the overall carbon footprint of our products. And it is important to communicate those outcomes to our customers as well. And furthermore, we do try and ensure that our products can be classified as sustainable by both considering environmental and social aspects.
Okay. And are you performing, for example, any life cycle assessments for any of your products in order to see what is the environmental impact throughout the whole life of the product from production until the product is discarded or used?
Yes, we do use a life cycle assessment for our products, and we also share those outcomes with our consumers as well.
Okay. Do you do life cycle assessments for all of your products, or just for some products?
Currently, we are only doing it for our most important products that are going out to our customers, but hopefully in the future, we'll be able to do them for all of them.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, it is really ideal for when we consider about sustainability for a product, really first to minimize the negative impacts, and then secondly to maximize the positive impacts. And we should all focus more first, making sure that our products holistically are not producing any significant harm, from an environmental or from social perspective, and only then can we start calling our products more sustainable. Well, that was it for now. Thank you very much for the transparency and for the fruitful discussion. Let's take a short break and let's continue later.
Great. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thanks a lot, Sarah.
16. Bye, thanks.
All right, so that was a very high level simulation, quite close to the reality of how Bearing Point Sustainability 360 workshop would look like. And in terms of the outcome, what could you expect after this series of workshop has been carried out, or let's say discussions has been carried out with the different departments? If we move on to the next slide, you will get an understanding of what is the sustainability maturity in all the different dimensions that were mentioned before. And just bear in mind that this graph here is a very high level simplified solution based on the 15 minutes interview simulation. But to give you an understanding, for example, the rating of 4 out of 5 for strategy, products, and services. The company did really well in having done a double materiality assessment as a basis for their strategy in defining clear objectives for the material topics, including all the departments to derive the measures in order to holistically implement sustainability in the company and to also jointly reach those goals. So not having sustainability as a silo topic. What they could still do is involve suppliers in their materiality assessment and engage in more dialogues and collaboration with suppliers, for example. So there is still room for improvement with external validation in there. Another example, just to it's, for example, for the finance, regulatory risk and reporting. So they're obviously on the right track with the double materiality assessment and working on the gap analysis for the CSRD. However, it's still not entirely clear for them how the other regulations regarding supply chain or deforestations will impact their company. Nevertheless, they are having their compliance department working on it. So it's not yet clear what the measures will be and what the impact is, but at least they started to work on it. So there's still some room for improvement there. And on the part of data and technology, they do have an internal software or an internal tool for measuring carbon emissions. We don't know exactly how much is this based on Excel versus how much is it an actual software tool. And they're definitely having a lot of manual processes still to gather sustainability related data, but they are definitely on the right track considering an ESG tool in order to centralize the data, streamline the processes and have all the topics in one spot, in one tool, also supported by automations. So just bear in mind that this is a very high level simulation, and in a real project, we would have discussions with the different departments for the 7 dimensions. You would get the insights based on 5 subtopics, and they will be supported by 200 plus maturity questions, not considering all of them, but only the ones that are really important and applicable most to the industry or the segment of your business. And then in terms of deliverables, what you can expect is for each one of the 30 subtopics, you would have a slide with the key workshop findings, understanding what is important for your company, what are the opportunities and what are the risks, as well as a list of selected recommendations, which we would then in a second step jointly review, prioritize, and put into a roadmap. So that's it for the short Bearing Point Sustainability 360 simulation and workshop results. And now I'll hand over to Garrett to take us through the different use cases we could have with the Bearing Point Sustainability 360.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Sarah. That was really interesting. It's great to see it in practice. Just very briefly, everyone, and just need our sort of our closing element here to ensure we finish within the hour. It's just really to call out that when delivering something like an S360 or a Sustainability 360, there are different ways in which that can be done. So, for example, with the BRC, we used a survey-based maturity assessment, which worked really effectively to reach out very quickly to a wide range of stakeholders. But we've also had good success with using a more workshop-based assessment, which is kind of what Alex and Sarah gave us an example of there. So that would be, you know, working with one-to-one or one-to-two with management level personnel to really understand that maturity across the key dimensions. And also what we've done with good success with a number of clients is doing awareness sessions, sustainability awareness sessions across their organization, sort of based on those S360 key dimensions as well. So I suppose there's always different options, you know, that the S360 then can also work. It can be done after a DMA, a double materiality assessment, because you know, you can use those dimensions then to define concrete objectives across the material topics that you identify in your DMA. And then, of course, where does it sit within a sustainability strategy journey? So, you know, your first phase is your analysis. That could be your DMA. Not everybody is in scope for CSRD, so they may not have to do a double materiality assessment. That's somewhere where your maturity assessment with something like S360 can come in. But then when you go into defining the strategy, you can use those 7 dimensions again to, when you get to that concrete measures, you know, and how each department can contribute to it. You'll have already linked into with those departments via those 7 dimensions workshops or survey. And that'll allow you then to define your strategy and move on to the execution thereafter. I'm terribly sorry, I don't think we've got time for questions, and it's a pity because I could see a few questions coming in there, everyone. So apologies for that. We tend to get a bit excited when we start talking about this topic, so we've probably gone over a few minutes on what we planned, but we'll note the questions and we'll respond out to everyone with answers within the next day or so. And I'll just hand back to Rob to close then. But thanks everyone for your attention and for joining.
Thanks, Garrett, and yes, thanks everybody for attending. Yeah, there's plenty of questions that have come in, and unfortunately we don't have time. But as Garrett said, we will reach out to those people directly, and everybody who has attended the session today will receive a copy of the recording. We hope you enjoyed the session today and found it informative and useful, and hopefully we'll chat to you soon. Have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.